one review. Book 101 is all about the books that are read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. One of her advocacy, better, faster, cheaper with AI. No other than Miss Becky Amble. Welcome,
Hello
welcome,
there.
Miss Becky.
Hi there.
Yes,
Good to be
welcome.
with you.
Yes, welcome, Miss Becky on Book 101 Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Sure. My entire career has been working with businesses and helping them grow, whether I was an employee, starting a company for somebody, or helping another organization do a startup. And that's kind of been my whole story the whole time. And then a few years ago, I decided that I wanted to learn some more things, and that was artificial intelligence. So then I went down that path, and people keep asking me, well, how do you do this? So I get asked a lot of questions, which is great because I love being able to answer questions and help people solve business problems.
Indeed. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Miss Becky. Thank you. And today let's talk about the four pillars of profit, the only four ways to grow your business. You argue that all business growth funnels into just four pillars. Before we name them, what is the fundamental mindset shift this framework forces an entrepreneur to make the most growth hack and tactics miss entirely?
Well, if I understand your question correctly, I would say that a lot of entrepreneurs come to business because they have a great product or a service idea and they know a lot about it and they have spent time perfecting it. And some of them don't really have the background in operating a business or knowing how to grow it. And so I think a lot of times entrepreneurs get stuck because they have so many jobs to do, and then they start going off one path and then they maybe shift to another path. And what I hope people will recognize is that if you can focus on four ideas, figure out the one that is going to be best for your business and your marketplace, then dig into that, it just simplifies things and you're going to be more successful.
Certainly, very well said, Ms. Becky. So, when a business owner comes to you feeling stuck, how do you use this framework for as a diagnostic tool? What is the specific question you ask to identify which pillars is truly the weakest link?
Okay, well, there's four options, and a person can just put a cross in the middle of a piece of paper and have four boxes. That's how complicated this gets. And so the first box is where you have an existing product or service in your existing market. And that's usually where most people need to focus their energy. It might not sound that exciting and jazzy. However, it's usually where we need to spend our time because let's just say that in a marketplace there's 100 customers, just for simplicity math wise. Most of us, if we're in that marketplace, we don't have all 100. We might have 50, we might have 20. So there's obviously more potential. Or the other thing that you can do in that particular strategy is to go after clients of competitors where the competition isn't really solving their problem or doing a good enough job. So, in each one of these four different strategies, I actually have a series of questions. And so, in this particular one of the questions would be, do you have all the customers you can handle in that particular market that you've targeted? Or, if you define ideal customer, whatever words you're using, do you have everybody? Or could you go get more? So there's some real simple questions, and then it gets a little bit more complicated or a little bit more detailed. And that's where what I tried to do in this book was give people questions so that they could do their own diagnostic and come back and go, oh, well, that makes sense. Well, that option doesn't make sense because here's how I answered the questions.
Very well said, Ms. Becky. So many founders mistake business for strategic growth. How does focusing on the four pillars cut through the noise and expose activity that's urgent but not truly productive for scaling?
Well, what a great question. So again, I think it comes down to a couple things. I'm really big on research. So not only understanding their own business and what's working and not working, understanding the customers. And we can talk about that ad nauseum and people say, I know my customers, I know this, I know that. Well, a lot of times we really don't have very good information. So we need to know what's going on in our customers' businesses, their life, whatever, and clearly understand that and make sure that we're addressing their pain and their problems. And when we can get real clear on who our customer is, what their pains are, what we can do to help them. Also, part of this isn't really built in. Part of it, obviously, we all know is how do we stand out? What makes us different and unique? Well, once we get all of that clear in our mind, then really determining which one of the four strategies is going to serve our business the best becomes simpler. So part of it is just clearing out some of the noise and being able to go almost go back to the basic and say, what do I know about my business? What do I know about the customer? Okay, what's most important and how do I grow it? And then you dig into these and all of a sudden you go, oh, now I get it. It makes sense.
Mm, definitely go to the basic, people, and attract more leads. Beyond this, man, spend more on ads. What is the most under leveraged high impact strategy you see for systematically increasing lead flow that respect today's savvy consumer?
Well, that's a really great question. And you probably would be way better at answering that question than I would because my focus is primarily business to business. And I
Mm-hmm.
love business to business. And in some ways, business to business, in my mind, is easier because you have a pretty specific, defined customer that you're going after and all of that kind of stuff. And so, as far as your leads and lead gen, again, I think really Daniel, it goes back to the basics of making sure you know what their pains and problems are. When you know that, then you can make sure that all your lead gen is focused on people or businesses that have those problems. And I think that's really, really key. You know, there's some things that you can also do to measure um, a customer, their readiness to buy. And that also, of course, is going to help on your lead flow being more effective in your lead gen.
Mm. Interesting and very well said, Miss Becky. So tell us, stop struggling with AI implementation. Can you expound more the phrase that's on your website?
Sure, sure. You know, a lot of times, again, people get excited about a new idea. I mean, don't we all? It's kind of where the fun
Yes.
is.
Uh-huh.
And we have to a little bit control that to make sure that we're taking those new fun ideas and making them work for our business. So a lot of times I think people, a couple things is they're overwhelmed because there is so much out there in AI land. You know, I was lucky. I first took classes from three different organizations, and the one that I really recommend has an ongoing program where they finish the 12 weeks, then they start again. So it's always updated. And that's one of the challenges people have as well. So there's tons of options out there. They don't know how to make a choice of what tool to use, and they don't know how to keep up. So I would say find a great resource that can help you weed through all of these options. And again, be real clear on any of us in our businesses what is it that we're trying to accomplish? Because we don't want to just say, hey, everybody's talking about AI, I need to do AI. Well, for what reason? What's our business purpose? What are we trying to accomplish? What are we trying to do better or faster or whatever it is? Just, you know, and that's where we start with people. And I encourage people, if they do it on their own, do the same thing we do. We do an assessment to find out what are you doing now, what tech do you have, where are you running into bottlenecks. Go through and really spend some time dissecting what is bogging you down and what you think you need help with.
Well, thank you for that explanation, Miss Becky. So let's talk about the psychology of the conversion moment. For a lead who's interested but hesitant, what a single factor most often tips the scale, and how is it built into the process?
I'm not sure I'm totally clear on your question. I know you've got a great question in there. Can you explain it a little bit more to me?
Definitely. So we're talking about the convert. to more leads.
Okay.
So in psychology world of the conversion moment, for a lead who's interested but hesitant, what a single factor most tips that you can give?
Hmm. That's a really good question. And what I would say is you can use AI for some analysis, and that is a
Mm-hmm.
great starting point. I still go back to individual or primary, it's called primary research, where let's say you use AI and you say, hey, I'm selling to consumers, in this case, customers that have this problem that want to do X and achieve such and such. So you get all that explained to your AI and tell it, give me more information or whatever, you just use your artificial intelligence. Then, really, what is most essential is to talk to, even if it's just a handful of real prospects, and find out what is going on in their head, because
Mm.
that's what we really need to know. And as much as people don't like doing it, we really need that firsthand information. Some of the things that we do, that we build with AI, is we track and record phone calls. Everybody practically does that now. I mean, how many times have we been on the phone call and says this call is being recorded for quality purposes? Everybody's pretty used to that. So one of the tools that we built is to really identify the language that the customers are using. So when you come back, you're using their language, and they come back then and have that thought in their head of, oh, you're talking about me, or you get me, you understand me. So part of it is, however you go about getting that information, making sure that you're really talking in the way and communicating the way that the customer does.
Certainly. So let's talk about the strategic tension and integration, Ms. Becky. The foundation first. Is there a recommended order of operations? Should a business ever focus on, say, improving conversations before trying to attract more leads?
Hmm. I would say in that particular example, yes, because if you're trying to attract more leads and you don't have the customer's language, their wording, if you don't totally understand their pain inside, outside, you're probably not going to be as effective. I like to tell people, just pretend that you've got a chair in your office and your ideal customer is sitting there, and you want to be able to describe that person, as crazy as it sounds, almost down to hair color, eye color, all that kind of stuff, how they dress, what they care about, what their life is like, when you're dealing, especially in consumer products. So I always say, get really, really clear on everything that you can about your ideal customer or target market. And then you have basically the information you need to fine tune your lead gen, to fine tune anything else that you're doing that is more on the customer facing side.
Hmm. Interesting, Ms. Becky. Most small businesses have a limited resources. If they can only seriously invest in strengthening one pillar this quarter, and how do they decide which one?
Well, great question. And as you might guess, my big thing would be, make sure you have good information and make
Mm,
sure you understand those customers so well that they're like your best friend, that kind of thing, because that then makes all of your other decisions more on target, more, more perfected, and more effective. And even though that sounds super simple, I would
mhm.
say 99% of the companies I've worked for didn't have that together.
So, Ms. Becky, how do these pillars connect to create a virtuous cycle? For example, how does stunning repeat purchase experiences or natural fuel pillar or in a modern world?
Well, I'm hoping to answer your question, which is thought provoking. If you have these four pillars and you say there's four strategies I can use to grow my business. First of all, I love the fact that that simplifies things,
Mm-hmm.
because any of us can be all over the place and drive ourselves crazy coming up with ideas. So if you've got the four pillars, and then you can go through and say, now, based on my business, my ideal customer, target market, and where the company's at, and all these things, what makes the most sense? Then you zero in. It's like when we're looking for new customers and we're doing the funnel. We have the big search up at the top and we refine, and then we come down and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, there we go. Now we have people that want to do business with us. Well, the same thing is almost the case with these pillars is you go through and you answer some questions and you really dissect things until you kind of come down and you go, oh, well, that's the one that makes the most sense. That's what's going to help me grow my business faster, better, and be more effective.
Well, that interesting. Miss Becky, and very well said. And let's talk about the data versus institution. What are the one or two key metrics for each pillar that cut through the vanity metrics and tell you if you're winning or losing? Where should a founder look first on their dashboard?
Well, that's a good question. And, I'm not sure that I have a really good answer for you. I think on anything, we want to measure our sales, obviously. We want to measure our conversion, our closing ratios, all those kinds of things. And I don't know if it matters so much which of the four pillars or which of the four strategies, they're really different strategies. I don't know if it matters so much which one we're using because we still are going to measure our success in the same way. We're going to say, okay, what's happened to our revenue? And here's my revenue goal. I'm going to increase it 20% this year. And that means I have to do X, Y, and Z. Well, are those things happening? And that really doesn't matter depending on the strategy. We still are going to measure that. And we're still going to be looking at if we're measuring our lead gen and the quality of leads and our conversion and all of those things. We're still going to measure, I think, the things that affect our or are going to be reflected in success and results. So be real clear on our results and then the metrics that are going to measure that.
Mm, definitely. So, Miss Becky, as an entrepreneur, what are your short term and long term goals?
Okay, give me that one again, please.
What are your short term and long term goals
Oh,
as an
mine for my
entrepreneur?
business?
Yes, please.
Okay, excellent. Well, of course, on the short term, I have my monthly revenue goals and things like that, and I have my longer term for this year, 2 years, 3 years, that kind of thing. So I want to continue to provide services for clients, and I'm now looking at providing some options to people, slightly different ways that they can work with us. We might have a new option where basically we say, hey, we'll take 90 minutes. We'll come in and do an assessment. This is primarily AI and business growth, but we'll come in and do an assessment, 3 to 5K, 90 minutes. We're going to do the assessment. We're going to give you ideas of what you can do. Over, done. If that's all you need, good. Move on. And that versus clients where we have clients that will bring us in and put us on a retainer, 10,000 a month, 50,000 a month, whatever it might be. So we're trying to be flexible and grow the business. And I do have a bit of an obsession, I think. I don't know what else to call it. I write books. So I've written
Okay.
6 on artificial intelligence. I've got one coming out on Tuesday on networking, which is a rewrite of a book that I researched back in the 90s. And I thought, why am I not just redoing stuff I have? I mean, that's obviously a typical strategy we use. So I want to continue sharing information through my writing that I think for some people, they can buy the book and go, cool, it's all I need. Other ones will want to dig in a little bit more and need some help from us or somebody. And so I just want to continue doing those things and providing help for businesses and entrepreneurs that want to grow their business and want to get their joy back and their time back and feel happy that they're in business.
Definitely. Good luck to your goals, Miss Becky, and looking forward for more success. And what would be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be like you?
Oh, that's a great question. I think one thing is continue learning and continue to seek out information and as much as possible simplify what you're doing if you can. And any of us can get just tied up on complexity and go in circles. And so sometimes we just need to take that step back and say, okay, let me review my basics, what I really need to do. And like I said, that's why I like uh, the book on the 4 pillars is really based on something called the Anchoff model. And if you can narrow it down and say, there's 4 main ways to grow my business, that just narrows your options right there. So I think keep learning, stick with it, and simplify what you're doing. I guess that's not just one thing.
Simplify, people, simplify. And thank you for that empowering advice, Miss Becky. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Well, the books that I like might be a little different than what other people are reading. I do like Traction because I come out of corporate, and my world is pretty familiar. If you come out of corporate, getting process down is pounded in your head. If you haven't had that experience, the books by Gino Wickman are really good from that standpoint. I would say some of the books that I probably like the best are more about people and our spirit and what drives us. And so Ogmandino has passed away. He wrote a number of really great books. One's called Mission Success that I love. He wrote The Greatest Salesperson Ever, or Greatest Salesman, Salesperson, whatever the title is. He wrote that. It's just a little skinny book. I think those are great. I like anything by Ken Blanchard. So there, I'm giving you a whole library. And there's a lot
Hmm.
of really great books that have come out now too from, Mel Robbins and The One Thing. And, Mel wrote the 5 Second Rule. Some of those things, I think a person needs to decide, do I need how to's? And that's more like the traction type of book. Or do I need something to kind of make sure I've got the attitude, I'm resilient, I'm sticking with it? Do I need somebody to kind of pump me up? Yeah, there's, I think, two main categories of books, the skill ones and then the ones that are more attitude based. But I see you pulled up one of my AI books.
Yes, 45 essential and cheat sheet for ChatGPT. And thank you for that recommended books, Miss Becky. And let's talk about the 45 essential cheat sheet for ChatGPT. What is all about, Miss
Oh, well,
Becky?
it's kind of funny. The original book that I wrote was called Mastering ChatGPT for Women, and I won't get into why I did that. However, I went through when I was writing that book and I was coming up with all these things that people could use and was going to put them in the appendix. My appendix was going to be 75 pages long. I thought, you are crazy. You can't have an appendix 75 pages long. People will think, they're not going to look at this. So I took all that out of the book. And later, as I was thinking about things, I thought, well, why don't I just put those into a book? So I call them cheat sheets because they're basically where I have gone to ChatGPT because that was the only game in town for quite a while. And so I went to ChatGPT and I said, I gave it a very detailed prompt on how to do something. So these 45 cheat sheets are all basically output that I got from specific prompts on how to build a network, on how to write a sales letter, on whatever the issue might be. I created I thought a pretty good prompt, and then had AI generated. And so this is basically a book of tables on how to do one particular thing, and there's 45 different topics.
Interesting, Miss Becky. But before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in sixth season, abstract poetry in third season, and my book 101 review in sixth season as well, comedy 101 third season, and my food 101 in sixth season too, geography 101 love letters, movie 101 review, music 101 of fifth season, science 101, sex 101 fourth season, Spiritual Awakening Trivia 101, Law 101, Mental Health 101, Motivation 101, Entrepreneurship 101, and of course, my Bible Verses 101 are my baby podcasts. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcasts. So, Miss Becky, after all this, if you could leave the audience with one piece of advice in the next 30 days, what is the single most impactful diagnostic action every business owner should take to audit the four pillars and choose the one focus priority?
That's a great question. And I think what happens a lot of times is I run into people and they say, "Yeah, we're going to grow our business." I go, "Well, how are you going to do that?" "We're going to sell more." So that's kind of like pie in the sky vague stuff. So I would say for everybody, get real clear, very, very clear, very specific on your goal. If you say, "I want to grow my business to a million revenue this year, 5 million, 10 million, whatever it is, be very, very specific. Then you can figure out the strategy. And a lot of times I think people just have not nailed down and made a commitment to what that real killer goal is going to be, or their big goal. And then coming to the next step gets easier.
Yes, Miss Becky Amble, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your business, your books, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Yes, absolutely. Would love to have people do that. You can find me on Amazon. My name there is Becky Amble, as you can see. So use that. You can find me on LinkedIn. I put out a lot of information that I think is useful for people. Right now, I'm kind of doing the promo on my book since that's coming up. And then they can also reach me at Becky Future Focus AI, all together, no spaces, at gmail.com. If they want to drop an email, they're welcome to do that.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Becky Amble because if you support her, for sure, more and more empowering advocacy like this to rise. So, Miss Becky, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. It's been great to be with you and your listeners. And you've got a lot of really cool stuff going on.
Thank you. Monica, people, see you soon.